Lights, camera, action.
Welcome back, everybody, to Popcorn Diaries. And on this episode, we're going to cover a time from the past. A time when Reebok pumps were all the rage, when Garbage Pail Kids were being traded on the streets, when Mario Brothers was the game to beat. Yes, we are talking about the 1980s. A time when movies were at their heyday, really.
They really were.
You had, new innovations, new techniques coming out with special effects, a lot of special effects makeup going on. So we're going to talk about all the movies that we love from the 1980s, movies that continue to have popularity today, and that also have lots of little hidden jokes in new movies that come out in today's era. They have been redone, some have been remade already, but all these movies are classics. They are movies that we watch again and again. So let's start off, Joe. What do you got for me?
Well, the 80s was an absolutely fantastic time for movies. Let's begin. Back to the Future.
Of course.
I mean, that just happened here again with a celebration here in 2015. And what better way to start off the 80s than to talk about the Back to the Future franchise? Three movies. There was a great mix of movies. There was horror movies. There was space movies. There was great comedies. There was thrillers. I mean, you name it, it was there.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you. Back to the Future is one of the great franchises that came out in the 80s. They definitely did a lot of new special effects in that movie. Michael J. Fox was phenomenal in that movie. And, who hasn't watched it and loved it and wanted to travel back in time, gone to the future, tried to see what it was. They didn't quite get it right when it came to 2015, but
about 30 years.
There were some things. Another great franchise that came out of the 80s, of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite all-time series. I love this movie. Many have said that Indiana Jones wasn't even necessary for the first film, but Harrison Ford made Indiana Jones what it is. And the movies were they had action, comedy. They were just great to watch. You had adventure, everything that you can imagine, even paranormal things. And who doesn't love watching Indy run from a giant stone ball coming at him? I mean, these movies were just fantastic, and I've watched them again and again.
Yeah, what a great movie franchise. I don't care. I love all four movies. You can argue about the fourth movie all day long as not being very good. I don't care. I own all four of them, and I watch them time and time again. Let's not forget Star Wars.
Of course. I mean, here we are. Star Wars is coming back bigger and better than ever.
Yep.
And they all sparked in the 1980s. These movies just pushed forward when it came to visual effects. They did everything that they could to make these movies come alive. I mean, who doesn't love all these movies? Episode 4, 5, and 6 were just amazing. I mean, you tell anyone that are true Star Wars fans what their favorite movies are, and they're gonna say 4, 5, and 6. They're not gonna say 1, 2, 3. They're gonna say 4, 5, and 6. I guarantee it.
Yeah, they're gonna jump right into Return of the Jedi as
course.
Maybe being the best one out of the 6, but we'll see when number 7 hits here real soon.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. You might have a new favorite Star Wars movie.
Let's not forget the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
Oh my God, how can you forget Freddy Krueger? Those knives scraping across the wall, coming at you.
Yeah.
These were moments that were iconic, and still to this day, Freddy Krueger happens to be one of the biggest monsters in horror movies.
Yeah, that's that great franchise there. But it wasn't just about franchises. There was some great singular movies that truly defined the 80s. Scarface.
Oh my God. Scarface is one of my all-time favorite movies. I mean, how many times can you remember hearing,
Yep. Say hello to my little friend.
I mean, these lines were said over and over. And a lot of the things that we've quoted throughout the years come from 80s movies because they were just fantastic, cheesy dialogue. Scarface was a phenomenal movie. I mean, everything that went into play with it, the story was rock solid, lives up to today's standards, really. I mean, if you've never watched Scarface, you definitely have to give this movie a try.
Absolutely. And then let's not forget Dirty Dancing.
Can we please forget Dirty Dancing?
That movie made such an impact on so many people. It's still watched today. Love it or hate it. You're on one side or the other with this one. But there's something about the theme song. When you hear that, you instantly think of Dirty Dancing. What a great movie for the time.
And who can forget Bueller?
Anyone?
Bueller. Anyone? Ferris Bueller, to this day, is one of the most fun movies to watch. Who didn't want to do something like this kid? Ditching a day of school, taking a nice, shiny red car out on the town, doing everything that he could to break the rules. It was a fantastic movie.
And still watchable today.
Yes, very watchable today.
And it is one of my all-time favorite movies. And I love how he breaks the fourth wall by looking at the camera.
I know.
And, with his commentary.
Dialogue in this movie was just great. I mean, you had those breaks where he looked at the camera and talked to the audience that just played so well with the internal dialogue of everything that was going on. All these characters just were fantastic.
And let's not forget that Friday the 13th started in 1980. That whole franchise launched that.
Not to mention also The Evil Dead.
Yep.
The Evil Dead series also started early in the 80s with The Evil Dead 1. And what a fantastic movie. I mean, special effects, a lot of claymation in that movie. A lot of work went into creating all these characters. And I mean, this movie is just... It's in the horror genre, but you watch it and you cannot help but laugh and laugh and laugh at these things.
It is very, very entertaining. Although I will admit on Evil Dead 2, that poster's a little creepy looking with the skull face. That still gives me the woolies. And then, of course, we had The Shining with Jack Nicholson come in 1980. Yeah. If The Shining doesn't scare you to death, there's something wrong with it.
I mean, how many times have we heard in television shows, in movies, in remakes, here's Johnny. Yep. I mean, this is one of the most iconic lines that you can come out of the 1980s. Great movie. Loved it. And it's just something that is going to be a classic. It's going to continue to be a classic.
And still very watchable. I did catch a piece of it not too long ago, and it's Nicholson at his best.
Very much so.
Yeah. And let's not forget the Halloween franchise.
I know. Another franchise that came out of the 80s. You hear that theme song and you know he's coming. Yeah. No matter how fast you run, he will keep up pace with you. Yeah. That is one of the greatest things of this horror franchise is that you can run through the woods and your little towel fall like 300 times and you turn around and he's right behind you.
Yeah.
This is one of the greatest franchises. You've got all of these franchises coming out of the 80s. Let's not forget who you're going to call.
Absolutely. Ghostbusters. I love the entire series of the Ghostbusters. The first one was just so good. It was so Bill Murray.
Yes.
Yeah, it was absolutely perfect. You could tell he's having fun making that movie.
Oh, he's always had fun making movies, but he really enjoyed making Ghostbusters. And these movies are just classics. I mean, now we have, Ghostbusters 3 maybe coming out.
Yep.
All these franchises are still very much popular today. They are bringing out new movies for these franchises.
Terminator.
The Terminator. I mean, Terminator just had a new movie come out. This is a series that is out of the 80s. The first Terminator movie was in 1984 when Schwarzenegger came on screen and showed us the path to the future.
And how many times have we heard, I'll be back?
Exactly. And that's what's great about the movies of the 80s is that they are still very much alive today. A franchise that is still kicking around today. Not too long ago, we had the latest Die Hard movie. Bruce Willis is still very much the action hero even today. And back then in the 1980s, he was in his prime. And these movies are still very much alive today. They're still watchable. You can go back and revisit all these movies and really get that great nostalgia from watching all these movies of the 1980s and see a different world, a different era where all the movies of today have their beginnings.
Right. And the true test is, can you go back to a movie that was made possibly 30-some years ago, and can you still watch it?
And fall in love with it.
And fall in love with it and come away with a smile or at least some emotion. Because we've seen so many movies that when you watch them 5 or 10 years later, they're outdated, they're horrible. You just can't get yourself through it.
Yeah.
And that in the 80s was truly the exception there.
I think one of the reasons that the movies of the 80s are still so watchable today is that they were charming. And they always had a sense of adventure. And that's something that doesn't change. We all are always looking for a new experience, a new adventure. I mean, how many times have you heard the words, Goonies Never Die.
Yep. Goonies, came out in 85, and that started that whole business off.
I know.
Yep.
A bunch of kids running around looking for pirate treasure.
Yep.
Who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, what's not to love about that? And let's not forget, some movies that truly had cult followings. Blade Runner.
Of course.
And there's noise about making a new Blade Runner.
Yes, from what I hear.
And that movie is totally watchable even to this day.
Yes. There was also some really great comedy movies that came out of the 80s. One of my all-time favorites, Airplane. Oh my God, the Airplane franchise is just one of the funniest franchises you will ever see. Who doesn't remember Speaking Jive?
Yep.
And, everybody slapping the hysterical girl.
Right.
And, the inflatable co-pilot.
Yep. And there's line after line there that you just have been repeated so many times in other movies, and you think instantly of the Airplane franchise. Back then, you didn't even see those lines coming. It was just they bombarded you one after another. And what Leslie Nielsen, that put his career right back on track. And then he went on to the Naked Gun series and everything like that. It was to the point where I didn't even care what the movie was. I just wanted more.
Another comedy franchise that came out of the 80s was National Lampoon's Vacation. The original movie is by far the best. Yeah. 1983, Chevy Chase at his prime.
Yeah.
This movie was witty and fantastic, and the comedy in it was just, you were just rolling around with laughter. It was hilarious.
Unfortunately, personally, it kind of went downhill from there for me.
I want to say the same thing. It wasn't exactly one of the best franchises afterwards, but even today, they're still spitting them out.
And let's not forget Who Framed Roger Rabbit. What a mix of real action and animation. It was seamless, great stars. This thing was hilarious.
It was really ahead of its time. To see characters side by side with live action actors was just, you didn't even know how they accomplished this.
It was seamless.
Everybody saw this movie and was like, how did they pull this off? It really sparked a movement, and it really launched visual effects into another era.
It did set the bar really high, no doubt about it. And, you got to talk about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure came out.
Of course.
I'm not sure it's watchable that much these days.
It's still watchable.
I haven't seen it for a long time, but again, there's lines in there that are just going to kill you. Every time Keanu Reeves, whoa.
And you can't forget Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton was fantastic in this movie as Beetlejuice. He was gross but funny, and everything that went on in this movie is just hilarious. The claymation, the visual effects, everything that played in this movie was just fantastic. And it's one of the movies that still stands up to time. I've watched this movie probably again and again, 20, 30 times.
And it's one of my favorites. Tim Burton, again, pulls off another, great movie there. I love the claymation in this. No one could play Beetlejuice better than Michael Keaton. There was absolutely perfect role for him.
And there was also this very fantastic niche of fantasy movies.
Yep.
Like Dark Crystal, The Labyrinth.
Oh yeah.
Legend, Krull, Conan the Barbarian.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Crystal really was one of the movies that I still to this day love. The puppeteering in this movie is fantastic. The story is solid.
It's a great story.
It is just beautiful to watch. And then you've got this other mix of live action characters and puppets going on in Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun. It's such a great musical. David Bowie acting in movies. That was just great to see. And to this day is one of my daughter's favorite movies. And then you had Legend, a very young Tom Cruise in a very different role. And if you've never seen this movie, you have to watch it just to see the difference in his acting style for this movie. Because he's not in action. Well, he's kind of in action still, but it's not to the nth degree like in Mission Impossible. He's this, kid that's trying to save someone. And it's just such a beautiful story.
It's a great early role for him, no doubt about it. And then, of course, he went on to Top Gun a year later.
Yeah.
And just, that just exploded him on the scene.
Lastly, in the fantasy genre, my favorite movie by far, to this day, nothing in the fantasy genre has ever been able to top this movie for me, The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
This movie just has it all. And even when it's being introduced by the grandfather, he says it. You've got sword fighting, action, adventure, romance, and it delivers. It is just chock full of comedy and action, and just what a story. A story that lives up to today's standards. I can't see this movie ever being remade because no one can play these characters the way that they were played. I mean, Andre the Giant.
Yep.
In this movie, he is a big, lovable teddy bear. Another side to him other than this huge wrestler. It was just one of the best movies that came out of the 80s for me.
Yeah, Rob Reiner did an absolutely great job with that. And yeah, it can't be redone. It is as good as that movie's ever going to get. And, you can watch that thing again and again. What great family entertainment.
And then there were some movies that really changed the face of our world, the way that we look at things, and really brought some issues home.
Full Metal Jacket.
That movie changed the way I looked at life. It was just, it left you speechless.
Yeah. Exhausted.
And you watch this movie and you felt it. You felt that, oppression.
Yeah.
And to play it on screen and to show it, it's not an easy subject to watch.
No. And you're in for a ride in the first third of the movie when they're in boot camp. And then, they get out to the action and it just spirals into just deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's just like, is this really the way it was there?
I mean, it just really showed you a different slice of life and a slice that wasn't pretty, And this movie, I think, is one of the best movies that came out of the 80s that really, to this day, you wonder, is that how things were? And is that how things still are?
It really brought the horror of war on the big screen. But not the only thought-provoking movie out there. There was The Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams. This was a little-known movie. It didn't really do great.
But it has become such a classic because
it's stellar performances here.
Yes, the acting in this movie was just phenomenal, and the story, I mean, it just gets you. Every single time I've watched this movie, it just gets me. And you think about things, and it makes you question what life is about.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you see this movie, you understand immediately why Robin Williams was Oscar material.
Yes, definitely. There were also some misses in the 80s.
No, there was nothing bad in the 80s.
Of course there were. There are always some bad movies. So which ones do you think were the worst?
Well, I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with me on this one, but I've never gotten this movie. It did well. I know it's a cult classic. It's on the best list. The Breakfast Club. I'm sorry. This one does nothing for me. I don't get it.
I don't know. It's got such a following, but it didn't. I mean, the song is great. Who doesn't love the song at the end of the movie? But other than that, there really wasn't anything that connected me to this movie. It was just a bunch of misfits, and I get it. All these kids with, different things in life. And, you got the rich kid, you got the jock, you got the misfits. I just didn't really get it. And it's just not one of the movies that I would say is one of the greatest ones of the 80s. But yeah, it's definitely a miss for me.
Yeah. And if you've been listening to us in the past, and I know you have, that we are huge James Bond fans. And of course, this was the run of Roger Moore. Yeah. And I'm sorry.
No.
I don't like any of them.
No. Yeah, me either. He wasn't my favorite in this series. His movies were just so blah. He's just doesn't have the charm and the debonair that Bond had. And yeah, it wasn't a good run for the Bond movies in this era. And then, of course, there were some very, very horrible movies that, why did they make them? And top of the list, Xanadu. Oh, God, this movie is a disaster. I know that Grease was like such a phenomenon.
Huge. It was huge. Yep.
Xanadu just sink to the bottom.
Yeah, well, they were trying to recapture the magic.
And it didn't work.
And it was nowhere in the house.
No, it was... Oh, God. I don't even know what to say about this movie because it's just so bad. Yeah. If you could even get through watching this movie once, I applaud you. And even some of the best actors had some misses, and one of those would be Popeye. This movie just was not what I wanted it to be, and it really, Robin Williams, I mean, he does his best with this character, but... Overall, this movie's just weak.
As much of a talent as Robin Williams was, he could not save this movie, unfortunately. I really, really wanted this movie to be good. And there are some bits in it that do get you laughing a little bit. After that movie, Robin Williams' career stalled very seriously. He often referred to that as the Popeye years.
And then, of course, not to forget, the Garbage Pail Kids movie was horrible.
That is beyond horrible.
Oh, God. Who ever thought that this would translate well into a movie? I do not know. I think they were just trying to bank on the fact that the trading cards were so popular.
Yep.
But that didn't translate onto screen. Not at all.
They were definitely trying to cash in on the popularity of the games and the cards. And, rarely does that work. Take a look at Mario Brothers. But that was another one that they tried to bring to the screen.
There were so many movies that just didn't do very well. And, that happens year to year. We
Yep.
have definitely some failures. But there were all, the 80s are still some of the greatest years for movies. All these movies are talked about today. So if you've never watched any of these films, it is definitely time for you to visit the 1980s.
Definitely.
Not only will it allow you to see some great films, but it'll help you to appreciate some of the films of today.
Yeah.
And you'll start to notice that some of the references that you've maybe missed in the movies of today come from movies in the 1980s. So definitely go out, check out some movies, watch all these films as much as you can, and you will really appreciate what movies are all about.
Yeah, I like to say if I was stuck on a desert island and could only pick one decade of movies to watch, the 80s would definitely be my choice.
You'd laugh, you'd cry.
Yeah, there was
you'd see
everything.
a lot of horror movies.
Yep. Which is okay.
It's just fine. So that's going to wrap it up for us today. I hope you enjoyed this 1980s Blast from the Past episode. And join us next time. And as always, I'm Adriana.
And I'm Joe.
And this was Popcorn Diaries.
Lights, camera, action.